Welcome to Everything Life and Financial Freedom. We are your hosts, Linda and Jim McKissack. If you know our story, you know that we went from over $600,000 in debt to having financial freedom. We share some of the insights and practical tips that we've learned over the last 30 years for achieving financial freedom, building wealth, and building an extraordinary life. Let's get started with today's episode. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Everything Life and Financial Freedom. I'm Linda McKissack.
And I'm Jim McKissack.
And again, if you haven't listened to our podcast before, welcome. We're happy to have you. And as I always say, we're just ordinary people who decided we want to have an extraordinary life. And so we looked for opportunities to multiply our time, our money, and our relationships to make that happen over the last 30 years. It's not been a get rich quick or make your life, expanded in a short period of time, but definitely by consistent over time, proven strategies, we were able to do that. And so feel blessed to do that and want to share with other people who want to have an extraordinary life on how to do that. So today, Jim, you and I are going to talk about, we have a question that came from actually my trainer, Jeremy. The question he asked was, how do you get started? He said, I just don't even know how to get started. He said, I might know a little bit more than some people, but I still feel like I don't know enough to get started. So what would you say to people who say, how do I get started?
Well, I think it starts with a plan.
Yeah.
And I think you need to sit down and you need to look at what is your plan. Just going out there buying one house or so. Whenever we were doing it, we were trying to figure out how much money did we need by the time that I was a certain age to retire and live happily ever after and not have to work anymore unless we wanted to.
Yeah.
That was we call that our freedom number.
Yeah.
And so at that time, our freedom number was 250,000, right?
Yeah.
And so at that number, we just backed in the average sales price of the houses were at that time. And we knew at that time I was 40 years old. And so we knew in that market back in the early 90s that we had to buy 20 houses, get them paid for over the next 15 years.
Right.
We gave ourselves 5 years to buy those 20 houses, and we financed them for 15 years. And at the end of that period, we would have a cash flow income, with a huge net worth income, but our cash flow income would be right around $250,000 a year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so that was kind of the plan on the front end. Now, to get started and stuff, we went out into the real estate market and we went straight to the MLS and started looking for properties at the MLS. Some of them were properties that had been on the market for quite some time and stuff, and they needed some work on the properties and stuff. And we were willing to go in there to do the work. And we were able to find some deals and make some deals happen.
Yeah. And I think his questions are more around like money. He said, I don't know whether to keep saving up my money till I have a large amount or whenever I have enough, do I just go ahead and buy the first house? And I think for you and I, it's like when you have enough, buy the first house, right?
Right.
Because then you get those people like a big piggy bank paying off that house for you. So you start the momentum the minute somebody else starts paying for a house that you own. So I think that's where people get hung up is how much money do I need? And it depends, because what do you think bankers are going to request if they haven't done any investing before?
They're going to want 20 to 25% down.
Yeah. So pretty much if you take one of our other podcasts that we talked about on where to buy and what price range to buy in, you said to probably anything below, the average price across America right now, average home price is
$514,000.
Yeah, so any way below that would be good. If you could go below that, anything below that would be
I'd
good.
say 350 and down.
350
That's where it would be a good starter point.
So then you could figure real quick what 20% of that is, and that gives you something to shoot for. And I know the first thing people have is, I don't know where I'm going to get that money, but I always say you're driving it, eating it, wearing it, or living in it. So how bad do you want this freedom and these options that we're talking about, right? And so I think that is a big stumbling block for most people is how much money do I need? What do I need to do?
A good litmus test for that is how much money do I have?
Yeah.
If I had $50,000 sitting around, $50,000 on a $300,000 house, 20% down would be 60,000.
Yeah.
And so that would be the money that you would need to go into the deal, somewhere between 50 and 60 grand. So you'd need to be looking, if you only had 30,000, you'd probably need to be looking at houses at 250 and down.
Yeah. And, or like we said, the way we did it in the beginning, we didn't have the money. We were $600,000 in debt. We found a partner. So, I mean, I think what you have to do, and we heard this the other day when we were at a conference. Are you obsessed or are you just interested? Because you have to be obsessed that you're going to figure this out, that you are determined that this is the way for you to have extraordinary life and get some momentum in your life. Because the problem is we don't have momentum in our life until we create it.
Yeah.
We just have so many years, so many days, no extra advantage until we create those advantages.
What's really exciting about that deal when you really look at it, let's say you were buying a $300,000 home.
Yeah.
And you put $60,000 down on it, you're getting control of a $300,000 asset for $60,000.
Yeah.
Where can you go do that?
Yeah. And
in the investing world.
Yeah. And that's one of the questions he has is, how do I know where to put my money? And of course, we're big on real estate investing. And so you always tell the story about if it was stocks, how much money would they
You'd need $300,000.
Yeah. So,
to go buy that stock.
60 is a lot of money. Yes, it is. But it's less than the 200 and something thousand you'd have to have if you were buying that much stock.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think sometimes people do stock because they feel like they can get in for a lot less. And you
can buy a lot less.
Yeah,
so you can buy smaller pieces. But with a real estate investment, just think about somebody paying off. You've got, we always call it the piggy bank theory.
Yeah.
And so you've got somebody paying off an appreciating asset for you over time.
Yeah. So true.
And so,
yeah. And I think in one of our other episodes, can't remember what number, we actually interviewed our banker who loaned us money when we probably, didn't know a thing about how to get money or do any of that stuff. And so it's a great episode. Go back and listen to that episode if you're wondering, how do you build those financial relationships with people? Because that's going to be super important, is to get a great relationship with the banker. And then I think also to answer Jeremy's questions is, think about what advantage you have. Now, Jeremy, my trainer, is also a very great carpenter. So he has such an advantage because he could actually go physically do the work himself. Right.
That saves a ton of money.
Saves a ton of money. Now, later, his time might be more valuable to him, so he might not do that. So what are your opportunities? And I think I've told this story on the podcast before, but my brother, who is in ready-mades, came from Lubbock, came to us and said, hey, I want to do what you're doing, but really foreclosure stuff wasn't probably the best thing for him. The follow through probably wouldn't have been that good. But we said to him, hey, why don't you go buy any extra lots you can find and take all your extra materials and build houses? So I think you've got to look for what's your leg up or what's your advantage. And when I think about Jeremy and his construction ability, I'm like, man, all he needs to do is be obsessed with finding that first house.
Yeah.
Because he can go do the work and have an advantage of other people. But I think the main thing is if you have enough money to do 2 houses, don't put it all in one, do 2. But you also can't live beyond, you can't overstretch yourself. I mean, we would never say, hey, but be so tight that you're worried about the next month. So wouldn't you say?
Yeah, you got to be conservative somewhat. And, it starts with the plan.
Yep.
And then it starts also with relationships. You want relationships with great realtors out there that understand investing.
Yep.
You want relationships with your banker. You want relationships with your insurance person.
Yep.
You want all those relationships, and you want to have those in place before you ever buy your first property.
Yeah.
So you want to do that, and you want to get your money together, and then you want to send your realtors out there and go find the deal.
Yeah.
And then when you go out there and you find the deal, you need to take a worksheet number out of our whole book and run the numbers yourself. Don't rely on somebody else to do the numbers for you. And make sure it's going to cash flow, and make sure it's going to, the numbers are going to work. And by cash flow, I mean it needs to probably cash flow $100 or $200 a month, after you finance it. And so when you do those things, I mean, you're off and running.
Yeah. And one of the things we'll attach in the show notes is our freedom number worksheet that they can download and get. And one of the things that we talk about when we talk about building a plan is, number one, deciding what is that freedom number for you. because I think most people don't ever put a number down because they're afraid, well, what if it's the wrong number? What if it's too high, too low? And really all the number does is get somebody committed to the process and get them started. So we'll attach that in the show notes so that you can download our Freedom Number worksheet, and allows you to figure out what would your life, what kind of money would you need coming in passively that you would have more options. You could quit work if you wanted to. You don't have to. We just want to give that to you as an option, right? We just wanted that as an option for ourselves. We still have no desire to quit working right now. Thank you for listening to the Everything Life and Financial Freedom podcast. For transcripts, resources, and more, visit the episode page on the podcast website at everythinglifeandfinancialfreedom.com. You can also download our Freedom Number worksheet. This worksheet will help you determine the amount of passive income you need to generate each year to sustain the lifestyle you have or the lifestyle you want when you no longer wish to work or simply want the freedom of your time and your money.
I know one thing, whenever we built our plan, that's when we got excited.
Yeah.
Our mindset shifted to the step point that we were investors before we ever invested a dime.
Yeah. And to that point, one of the things I said to my trainer this when we were talking about this is your wife on board? Because if your wife's not on board and she likes to shop, then you got a problem here, right? And so I kept saying to him, what's in it for her? What would get her excited about doing this? Because, he's just like, well, she just should this, then that. But the truth is that may not be what motivates her. People are motivated by two things. So, and a lot of times we get in a room, in our strategy room, and we're helping people. And the number one thing they say is, this is great, but how do I get my spouse on board?
Yeah.
I mean, most people are going to need both incomes to do this. And so what's in it for them? How could this be presented in such a way, or what book could you have them read? Because people don't do what we tell them, especially our spouses,
right,
or our kids. But if you can get them to self-discover that this is a great opportunity, that you can do something now to have so much more later. Right.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah. And so I think getting your spouse to be what's in it for them. And are they motivated by fear, or are they motivated towards something?
Towards gain.
Towards gain.
Yeah.
Because everybody's motivated by those two things. I'm actually motivated by fear, but I love all the gain I've gotten from doing this. I mean, one of the beginning motivators for me was, number one, I didn't like how it felt when we were $600,000 in debt. And I've been super poor before, and I don't like that either.
Well, I had to go broke before I got excited about investing. And so, and
you liked again, and stuff more back then.
I liked everything, it was fun. But anyway, but I had to go broke, and no, I never wanted to do that again, and figure out what it was going to take for us to go get to that point where we would never have to feel that again.
Yeah, so true. So sit and think about it. What would be a motivator? Because this is not for the faint at heart. You got to be obsessed with this and committed. You can't just be interested in this. And a lot of people, I think, are interested in investing or leveraging their money to create some leverage, but I think they're not committed and obsessed with it.
And the biggest thing is knowledge. The more knowledge that you have before you ever go do it, the better your odds are that it's going to be a great experience, and you're going to feel the value of it, and you're going to be able to grow your wealth over time. And so that's one thing about building wealth, is it does take time.
Yes.
That's the catalyst. That's the power of building wealth, letting somebody else pay off an appreciating asset for you over time while you continue to build and grow. You got to know there's phases of this investing. You're in the growth stage, you could be in the hold stage, and you could be in the disposition stage. And so there's just, of selling stuff later on down the road.
Yeah, getting rid of
stuff.
it.
Yeah. And so, it depends on which stage you're in.
And speaking of that, a lot of times that's what we'll start watching investors do. They don't have their hold package together yet. In other words, they don't. The first thing you have to do is say, how many hold properties do I need to have? And those are properties you are not going to sell until you get to a certain place in your life where you have everything else taken care of, and you're okay if you sell them. But I see people start to flip them. They see the high prices and they start to flip them.
Yeah.
But then what are you going to do with that money, right?
Right.
How are you going to go get that money making money for you? So it's a big mistake that we see people make. And we try to auto correct them and say, look, get your hold numbers first, and then you can flip, because it's not like we don't flip.
Yeah.
It's just that we have been so committed, so obsessed about getting our number of hold properties we need, that we've stayed committed to that.
We almost upgraded our whole portfolio in 2008, 9, 10, and 11.
Yeah.
We upgraded and we got rid of some other things and created more money to go out there and buy more.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I think the main thing is number one, why are you doing this? Or is it the fear of what your life might look like if you don't do this? And I don't think enough people spend enough time going, hey, if I played my life out 10 years, 15, 20 years from now, what does it look like if I keep doing what I'm doing?
right.
And when, so, number one, what are you motivated by? Are you motivated by a gain? Because we've gained a lot. I mean, we have a beautiful home. We have a plane that we ride around in. We don't have to have all the TSA mess, hectic and all this stuff like that. Those weren't things we actually went and started investing so that we could have someday. Those were just bonuses of us staying committed to it long term enough and continuing to work in our careers and our life so that
and that's the power of this, really, is being able to do what you do to continue doing that while an asset is sitting there getting paid for and growing and stuff while you're still doing what you do.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't think people think about that because really basically we had multiple streams of income coming in and we didn't depend on one and forget about the other. We kept working all of them and, leveraging all of them to get us where we are today. And, everybody's goals and dreams are different. And I'm not saying everybody wants to fly around on a plane. And I don't know that I always said, hey, I want to have my own plane. But as we began to progress and we started wanting hassles out of our life and we wanted convenience and we wanted freedom.
And we could afford it.
That's when we looked up and said, wow, we could do this. Right. So you got to decide, who are you? What are you motivated by? And if you are motivated by getting a plane someday or a big house someday, put that picture in front of you. Look at it every day and say, how many houses do we need to buy right now and somebody else pay off for? So someday that's my house. That's my dream house. That's my dream car. That's my dream plane, whatever. Or if you're motivated by fear, sit down and say, okay, let's look at this. And a lot of times it doesn't take much more, Jim, than looking at your own family members, what their money habits have been and what you're probably having to subsidize. We've certainly been in those situations, right?
Absolutely.
And blessed and happy we were in a situation where we could.
Yeah.
But you can look around 10 feet around you and you can see people that didn't make these decisions and they're struggling in the worst time in their life to struggle.
I read a statistic the other day in an investor magazine, and it said that 95% of the population has zero passive income.
That's crazy.
Yeah, 95% of the population has zero passive income.
That's
wow.
No options, no opportunities. That's living on the edge, literally.
Yeah.
And, trust me, I know there's people in our lives that no matter what would never have these kind of opportunities or do them. And I think God blesses those of us that can so that we can step into those gaps and do what we need to do. And nothing feels better, honestly, than being able to do that for somebody you love and you care about. But we have to do things today so that we're in that position someday.
I think the thing that scares me is what happens if we couldn't work anymore, or what happens if, something happened and we didn't have this. I mean, this has been really an insurance policy for our life.
So true. And, on the Freedom worksheet that you guys can download, we make you put a part called Life Unexpected because we've had a son-in-law who passed away for 10 and a half months. We wanted to be there and not be somewhere where we had to work and do everything every day. We wanted to be in the middle of that and spend that time with him and help where we could. And so we didn't know that was going to happen in our life. I mean, I don't want it to happen in anybody's life.
It was a miracle. We would have had 10 years earlier, we'd had a really hard time. Doing that.
Yeah, we couldn't have left our work. There's no way. So those are what we call life's unexpected. Another life unexpected is one of your family members who runs out of money because they're living longer. Everybody's living longer. Our medicine is keeping people alive, but it's not necessarily keeping them in the best of financial security. So we might have to step into a financial gap or do a life estate for one of your relatives or something. And so which one is it? Are you motivated by that opportunity to be able to do those things? Or are you motivated by the fear of what if you don't have options someday and can't work? So decide that, put your freedom number together, and then get obsessed.
I figured out another number. Let's say the average home price is $300,000 for an investor to go into. right now in this market.
Mhm.
Do you realize if you want to become a millionaire, you don't have to go buy 4 houses?
True. And who doesn't want to be a millionaire, right?
Yeah.
When you ask somebody, what do you want to be?
Yeah.
They say a millionaire.
Why wouldn't you do that?
Yeah. 4 houses, you can
And
be a
let
millionaire.
somebody else pay for them for you.
Yeah. I think one of our topics, we'll talk a little bit about why you want to work on your passive income and your net worth.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that in a future episode. So remember, if you have not, great conversation today, Jim. If you have not hit the subscribe button, please go ahead and do that now. We'd love to have you subscribe. Thanks for joining us today. And Jim, I'll see you next time.
Okay. And thank you so much for watching this, and look forward to helping you build an extraordinary life.
Yeah. Love it. See you soon. Thanks for listening today. If you haven't already, please subscribe and share this podcast with others. The greatest compliment you can give us is to leave a 5-star review, and please feel free to reach out to us at info@lindamckisack.com. We would love to hear from you about any ideas, topics, or guests to include on our podcast. So see you next time.